there comes a tipping point where you've been abroad longer than you've actually been in Jamaica. And something happens where even subconsciously you start to challenge how Jamaican are you? Like, how Jamaican are you still? You left when you were 13 and now you're 27, 28, 40. You know, a lot of Jamaicans don't question it. As far as they're concerned, from them have the Jamaican passport, they're Jamaican. But for me, I was beginning to feel disconnected because I didn't feel like I truly understood what was going on in my island anymore. So I started to challenge my Jamaican-ness.
Hello, Throp family, and welcome back to another video podcast episode. If this is your first time visiting, a special welcome to you. My name is Winthrop Wellington, and I am the host of On Deck with Throp, where we have meaningful conversations with people from all over the world, all about Jamaica. And today we have a very special guest with us. We have a very good friend of mine joining us, Simone Brown, who is the CEO and founder of 876 Volunteers. And her story is pretty incredible, at least I find that it is, and she does tremendous work here in Jamaica, working with many, many nonprofit organizations, including my family's own nonprofit organization, NEAT. And so at this time, I would like to take the opportunity to welcome Simone to the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I've been looking forward to this. I've been looking forward to this. Thank you.
You're welcome. And it's such a pleasure to have you. And I've wanted to do this for a long time as well. And as I mentioned before, I think the work that you're doing is absolutely incredible, and I think the entire world needs to know about it. But before we hop into that,
yes,
want to get a little bit of a background on yourself.
Okay. So I am of Jamaican heritage. So I wasn't born here, but I was basically raised here all my life. And at 18 years old, I moved to Toronto, where I was born, and I went to school. And then from then, I've been coming back to Jamaica, living in stints. So like living 3 years, 4 years. If I'm not living here, I'm coming here once a year, twice a year, 3 times a year to maintain my Jamaican connection. And maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, I was starting to feeling a disconnect a bit. And I realized in hindsight that for a lot of Jamaicans who migrate and decide to spend a good portion of their life overseas, there comes a tipping point where living abroad, you've been abroad longer than you've actually been in Jamaica. And something happens where even subconsciously you start to challenge how Jamaican are you? Like, how Jamaican are you still? You know, because you left when you were 13 and now you're 27, 28, 40. You've been in the States, England, wherever, Germany, Sweden for the majority of your adult life. Are you still Jamaican? Now, a lot of Jamaicans don't question it. As far as they're concerned, from them have the Jamaican passport, they're Jamaican. But for me, my personal experience, I was beginning to feel disconnected because I didn't feel like I truly understood what was going on in my island anymore. It was hard for me to stay on top of the news. It was hard for me to stay on top of the cultural heartbeat. You know, I was finding it difficult to keep up with just the changes in our patois slang and like the things that were mattering to us. And I'd come home and people would be referencing something and I had no idea what they were talking about. Yet still I was coming 2 times a year, 3 times a year. And so I started to challenge my Jamaican-ness. Like, what would I need to do when I come back to feel more Jamaican? Because I would come home and I go to the beach with my friends and, you know, hit all my favorite spots and leave. But I was getting this hollow feeling. Like, it didn't feel like I was maintaining or nourishing my Jamaican heritage. And so I started to challenge that. And then I decided every time that I would come home, I would give back. And what I was running into an issue with was, before I would come, I would try to do a Google search to find good charities that I could connect to while I was here. And I just was not, in my experience, getting the information that I wanted, the updated information, relevant information, and also like responses from charities. And so I was beginning to get really frustrated. There are central places where that information is housed, but at the time, the information was kind of static. So this is like, it would have been collected 8-9 years ago. So sometimes phone numbers don't still work or things like that. So I was running into that a lot. And I was just like, I wish there was a central space where people could always be on top of all of the good works that were happening in Jamaica, because good works are happening here all the time.
Right.
All the time that people don't know about. And I was like, what if I created a cross between Airbnb and Tinder, but for volunteering? And
Okay.
voila. 876 Volunteer
876
was born,
volunteer.
yeah.
And so, kind of taking a step back a little bit, when you were going through this mental process of questioning your Jamaicanness, was there something in particular that happened, or when did this thought process start coming into your head? Like, how many years ago?
Probably I was starting to feel it around the tipping point of I was in Canada, almost equal to the time that I was in Jamaica. So when I looked at the math, it was around that time. So it started to happen maybe about 10 years ago, but I didn't think anything of it until I would come home and I would feel like a visitor in my own country.
I see.
That started to happen maybe about 6-7 years ago.
Okay.
I would leave and it just wouldn't feel right. I wouldn't get that light feeling from being home and having a good time here. I just felt like there was something I wasn't doing.
And like the 6 or so years ago when that started to happen, were you spending more time in Canada than you would normally would be spending?
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
And what was kind of drawing you or making that happen, where you were not, for lack of a better term, but being forced or maybe had to stay in Canada more than you'd like to be staying in Jamaica?
You know, that's a really good question. I mean, now that you ask it, I think it was just, again, for me, for everyone, it's not the same thing, but it was like a complacency.
Okay.
You know, being in Toronto, resources are a lot easier to access. I mean, the whole experience is simpler. And so it becomes a comfort zone almost.
I
and
see.
then, so you get so comfortable, or I got so comfortable in that first world space that coming back home, I started to feel disjointed, and I did not like that. I wanted to always be able to navigate spaces in Jamaica because Jamaica is my inheritance.
Yes.
It's my inheritance, and I wasn't able to navigate spaces the way I would normally. I was feeling less confident in my Jamaicanness when I was home.
And when you were in Toronto, obviously Toronto has a big Jamaican community. Would you say that was your social circle to kind of...
None of my friends were Jamaican.
Oh, get out of here.
Not one.
Okay.
Not one. A part of that came from my teenage years. I had a good childhood, but my teenage years in Kingston were a little rough. They were a little rough for me. This just the environment that I was in. Teenagers can be cruel, and I just didn't feel valued in my community that I was a part of. I didn't feel like I was enough.
And so just to get this straight, you were born in Canada and
raised here from I was about 1.
In Kingston here?
Yeah.
Okay, in Kingston.
Yeah.
And then you went through adolescence in Jamaica.
All the way up to 18,
All the way
and
up
then
to
I
18.
went to university for 4 years. And then
In
I moved
Jamaica?
back. No, in Toronto.
In Toronto, I'm sorry.
And then after I graduated from university, I came straight back
see.
to Jamaica, and I was here for about 3 to 4 years. And then at the end of that stint, I moved back to Toronto, and that stint lasted about 16 years or 15 years.
I see.
And then I started 876 Volunteer, and after I started 876 Volunteer, my life was literally half and half. Half the year there, half the year there when you shake it out. Yeah.
I gotcha.
So my teenage years in Kingston, I just felt like I just wasn't enough, and no one really bullied me or told me outright that way, but there is a culture that values a certain aesthetic and values a certain, middle class experience, and I didn't always have the cool anything. My parents didn't prioritize that kind of stuff, thankfully, but it made for a bit of a rough teenage space. And so when I went away to University of Toronto, I remember going when I was 18, and it was the very first time that no one cared what I was wearing. No one cared what my last name was. No one cared how dark my skin. Literally, they did not care. I was a Jamaican at the University of Toronto Scarborough campus. Automatical VIP.
Oh, yeah?
What? In my first year of university, I didn't even have to open my mouth. Oh, you're the Jamaican? Yeah, man. Like, it was just... I was just valued for being myself and for being Jamaican. I think it was the first time I actually experienced the currency of being simply Jamaican.
Wow.
it was currency I capitalized on, and it helped a lot in assimilating into that space. And I'm very, very grateful for it. And so I took the opportunity to not immerse myself in the satellite version of the Jamaican community I was coming from. I took the opportunity to have Sri Lankan friends, Canadian-born Chinese, Somalians, all different Caribbean, Polish. Like this was my first taste of the global environment at that campus, and I ate it up.
Wow.
And then by the time I turned around, no one in my inner circle was Jamaican. Not because I don't love Jamaica, but precisely I found myself being an ambassador for my island, and I wanted to share that with people who needed it. Jamaicans don't need me in Toronto.
That's awesome. And I'm sure like that whole experience, especially the getting that VIP Jamaican card, that's a huge confidence booster for a young lady.
Yeah.
At being that at that vulnerable age, everybody's trying to figure out who they are, what they're going to do. And that's awesome to have kind of like your own little UN, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then be that representative of the island that you are so proud of.
Absolutely. And that's why I ended up with it. And so what happens is a lot of those core group of friends I had in university, I still have. Some of them live 5 to 10 minutes away from my apartment in Toronto.
Okay.
So that circle stayed international, and then all of the people who gravitated towards me were just international. I do find that this next stage of my life, I look forward to creating more connection in the Jamaican diaspora everywhere I go. Specifically in Toronto, I do feel like I'm ready for that. I think I have something to offer my Jamaican diaspora community now that I've spent a few years rooting this nonprofit, learning more about the experience here in Jamaica. So my Jamaican diaspora, whatever they ask of me in Toronto, I can provide. But when I was 18, I couldn't offer anything. So, what I could offer, internationals actually needed it more. And so I just ended up having a stronger connection then. But to everything a season.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
of course,
to everything a season.
Of course. And so fast forwarding to the start of 876 Volunteer, you mentioned the sort of impetus and the process that you went through with yourself and your identity as a Jamaican living abroad, and that being the inspiration for starting this. So, and you said you were looking for nonprofits to work with before that, and you were having some challenges. And so the idea of combining Airbnb and Tinder, let's dive into that a little bit and explain how that concept came about and how that works.
I just wanted it to be user friendly.
Gotcha.
I just wanted it to be thumb friendly.
Left and right.
Oh man, I just really did not understand why it had to be so difficult. And what was starting to become really maddening and frustrating was that there were so many things that weren't positive that were at our fingertips, and the things that we needed that were very positive were not at our fingertips. And so I really dreamt of creating something that was easily shared and easily used. And so the apps that at the time were the most user friendly and was really the nest of all these viral experiences was Instagram, for example, and Tinder and social dating apps, and also Airbnb at the time was just blowing up in terms of just finding places that you would never normally find very easily. So I was just like, the Tinder aspect came into play with trying to find charities that were well matched to you as a person. So what happens is you will have a core group of charities in Jamaica where the information is actually very accessible, but their principles, what they stand for, may not actually resonate with you. Not that they're not doing great work,
Right.
but it doesn't make you feel something. So, some of us have experiences with mental health illness in our family. Some of us are very passionate about the environment. Some of us have various experiences in life and would love to find a nonprofit that they can invest their time and resources in that means something, but they end up giving to the easiest organization, the quickest accessible one, because they don't have the time to go looking for that perfect match of an agency. So that was the Tinder aspect. Becoming sort of an interactive database rather than just a static Excel sheet or yellow pages, an interactive database where someone could reach out and go, I'm into this, that, and that, or I have that to give back. Do you know where? And then sort of just be like, I know the perfect place, and just create that connection. I feel like that kind of connection is more sustainable because what we want to do is create relationships and create community. A lot of people will give back, but they give back sporadically, and if you want to think of it like a one night stand here and a one night stand here and a one night stand here, but they don't actually come to fruition in terms of even a long-term relationship or something that feels good to both parties. So matching people with the right organization, again, if only for a season, I think would bring more people into the space where they give back on a more regular basis because the place resonates with them. So it's always in the back of their mind to say, I wonder what a home they need, and just always, and also to give back when they might feel like their resources are a bit tight. They would extend themselves a little bit more because the agency that they're helping feels like an extension of them.
Okay, so just to be clear in terms of how 876 Volunteer works, is that you are an individual I'm an individual who was looking to give back to Jamaica, but I want to give back specifically to education. And I'm having a difficult time finding an organization that resonates directly with what I'm passionate about as far as philanthropy goes. You are the organization that connects them with, as best as possible, an organization that fits the criteria that a donor or volunteer is looking for.
You got it.
Got it.
And again, I liken it a lot to dating apps and romantic relationships because the concept is still the same. So we do have donors and volunteers who reach out and they are looking for an example of an agency, someone who is 6'1.5" and earns $1.23 million US every year, and you want a tall man that can take care of you. Just keep it, you understand? So when you drill down a little bit too much, it becomes more about the fantasy of the agency that you're looking for. And we're not into the fantasy thing. We're into offering you something close, something that you need, not necessarily something that you want.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
And how did you go about finding the nonprofit organizations themselves?
Oh, pounding the pavement. So the first year of 876 Volunteer, I was still based in Toronto and doing a lot of things remotely and coming to Jamaica once or twice a year to register the company's Office of Jamaica. So we're registered as a nonprofit. So I came to Jamaica to do that, set certain things in place. And then that year also I cut back on a lot of my expenses that year because I knew that I wanted to do a leave of absence from my job in Toronto to focus on building a network of agencies, because again, I can't do that remotely because sometimes phone numbers don't work, websites aren't functioning. You literally have to go up and knock on the grill, knock on the gate and say, hey, I'm from this organization, can I talk to somebody, can I get a tour of the site? Of course, this was pre-pandemic. And so that's what I did. I took a year off in the second year of 876 Volunteer. I took a year off. It turned into 13 months because at the end of that, the pandemic started, and just pounded the pavement in almost every parish.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And then
so I backpacked around the whole island.
Right. I remember that.
That's how we met.
Yes, exactly. And so what type of criteria were you looking for, or do you look for in these nonprofit organizations in Jamaica?
Formal requirements would be that they are registered as a nonprofit with the Company's Office of Jamaica, and if they are seeking funds, to be registered as a charity as well. What we are trying to do is create a space where all of our followers feel safe with everyone that we connect. So 876 Volunteer is not going to train you to be a volunteer, or the vetting process is not up to us. Each agency has their own vetting process for a volunteer, so we don't get involved in that red tape at all. But we do promise that everyone that we connect you to will be either registered already or they're literally in the process of being registered. And these are founders that I can vouch for, that I know that they're in the process of being registered, and we know that they're on the up and up. So that's a formal requirement. Informal requirement, I learned in the very early stages to lean into people who are leaning into you.
Okay.
So some agencies may not have the bandwidth to communicate, be transparent, be responsive. No judgment. I understand. I get it. You're doing a lot of work with a little. But there are some agencies who are also doing a lot of work with a little, but find a way to prioritize making a community. And so managers are very, very open to communication. They want volunteers. They want to talk to donors. They want to create a relationship with people. These are the agencies I tend to work with the most and connect the most into the community. I also have a soft spot for agencies that are run like by civilians like myself, and it's like a one-person show.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, people are doing this out of the goodness of their heart.
Right.
People are going to debt, like just trying to make an impact because they believe in Jamaica. They get my full support. So those are the type of smaller agencies, not well-known ones. It's not the only agencies we work with, but we have a soft spot for the underdogs.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a soft spot for the underdogs.
And then how do you find the people the volunteers, essentially?
Well, they find us,
Okay.
and that's the thing. Again, because for all intents and purposes, especially administratively, it's still just me. I try to be efficient with my energy. So when I'm reaching out to agencies, that's one of the most like heavy tasks and very arduous tasks to do. So once I reach out, I will filter out agencies that are not ready for a partnership or collaboration for whatever reason. No harm, no foul. Focus on the ones that are. And then it's people who come to us. So we're primarily on Instagram.
Okay.
Full disclosure, because I still don't know how to operate Facebook.
Okay.
I was never a social media person
Yeah.
before this, by the way. I hated social media complete. I wasn't even on there. Somebody saw me on there and they're like, we thought you died. Like, we just, you're never on here. But yeah, on social media, people just reach out to us, slide into our DMs. People hear about us. Yeah.
Okay.
That's how we get our volunteers and our donors.
And you mentioned this a little before about who is on your team.
So administratively, you're looking at it.
Yep.
I do understand that the next season of 876 Volunteer is to expand when I think about scope, and I can't continue doing it on my own. So we are now in the process of getting a virtual assistant to help with administration, and also our response time on our inquiries. I should say my response time on inquiries, because it's just me, has not been as quick as I want it to be. And I don't want to get to a space where we become the same issue that I was running into years ago, where I wasn't getting responses. And so getting that virtual assistant will increase the better experience of people who reach out to 876 Volunteers. So that's a number one priority. So right now it's me, very soon to be more than another person. And then from the social media standpoint, I have 13 social media ambassadors.
Awesome.
And when I started 876 Volunteer, a huge component of it was social media ambassadors. So I have 13 of those.
And so I guess I was going to ask you, how do you manage the nonprofit organization while you're in Toronto, while you're in Canada? But maybe that would be through the ambassadors?
So when it comes to keeping 876 Volunteer in the Instagram space, my social media ambassadors help a lot with that. Their purpose is to agitate the algorithm, always be using the 876 Volunteer hashtag, and they themselves also do their own good works. And so it creates content around giving back continuously. That helps me a lot, because if it was just up to me, if I don't post, then nothing gets said about 876 Volunteer. So they help majorly with that. And then because of that 13-month stint where I was pounding the pavement here, I've created enough goodwill and good faith relationships with nonprofits that now, just through WhatsApp, managers and I are talking on a consistent basis. They tell me what they need. I will either flip it to my social media ambassadors and they'll promote it, or I'll promote it, and so the work keeps going on. So more often than not, people don't actually know exactly when I'm here and exactly when I'm not.
Gotcha.
Because it lives in the digital space, and so I created it with the intention of being able to run it from anywhere.
Okay, awesome. And could you tell us a little bit about some of the nonprofit organizations that you work with?
Absolutely. Well, the first one I worked with was yours.
Oh.
The very first.
I didn't know that.
The very first I worked with. It was for the festival that was happening.
Tomorrow Today?
Yeah, the festival that was happening here. And before when I came as a patron, the festival had helped like 24 kids, which was really amazing. Local kids experiencing the yoga and the wellness. And as a patron, I viewed that. And when I left, it was around the same time something shifted, and I was just like, you're gonna be a part of this festival next year, and you're gonna change how they give back. And the following year, I was basically their director of, not basically, I am the director of their community outreach. And what I did instead was, instead of bringing 20 kids to the Tomorrow Today festival, I brought Tomorrow Today to over 200 kids.
That's awesome.
And I brought them within a school, and they did yoga with grades. It must have been grades 4, 5, and 6, with all the teachers assistant, principal, the cafeteria people, and everybody did breathing exercises together. Everybody meditated. Everybody did yoga stretches, because I felt like, again, to create sustainable giving back, instead of giving back on your terms and what makes most sense for you, giving back to these children within the environment that you are giving them skills to exercise is the best thing. So when teachers are seeing them deep breathe, meditate, they know where they learned it, because they all learned it together. Versus taking them out of that environment, putting them precisely into your environment, and then giving them the burden of responsibility to take that into their community when those spaces may not be familiar with what you would have taught them to survive. So that was my first experience. And the Negril Education and Environment Trust was major in that, because you already had a community of children. NEAT was already very involved in Negril. And so what I wanted to do was to use the Tomorrow Today Festival to support an organization in Negril that was already doing the work. Don't reinvent the wheel, and then create that relationship with the idea that all future festivals, all future, even party weekends, all the rest of it should be connecting with all the local organizations to do their corporate social responsibility to give back to the people who are already doing the work.
I see.
And so NEAT was my first sort of my baby thing with that. And I remember just being so emotional, because working with you guys was the first receipt I got that 876 Volunteer was going to work. Before that, I had not done that before. And before that, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think it was done in Negril that way before either.
No, not that I know.
And then after working with you, I got the confidence to work with Dream Weekend shortly thereafter, to have their patrons bring in school supplies, because at the time it was happening, of course, right before back to school. And I'm like, you're having thousands of people come into Negril, and they're taking away experiences. What are they giving back? Specifically to the children of the area. And Dream Weekend partnered with 876 Volunteer. We got so much school supplies.
Awesome.
And then I distributed to basically all the schools I think you actually help and tutor. So that was one of some of the major collaborations. And then ongoing, we help agencies like Angelic Ladies Society, again run by one woman, Sarah Lou Morgan, who works with over half a dozen state care homes for young women. I mean, it's a behemoth of a labor that she does, and it's a labor of love. And so it's a pleasure to be able to promote her, because when I promote her, I'm really promoting about 7 state care homes at the same time. Right.
Wow.
So that's one. Girls First JA, one of the very key organizations, again run by one woman, who works with women who've been survivors of trauma. She works a lot with Pursuit International, which is, I think, one of the only organizations in the Caribbean that deals with human and sex trafficking survivors.
Wow.
Again, one woman show. They have a lot of support within their community, but if you're talking about who has the burden of responsibility, one person. It's just amazing the work that they do. I work with the Ebenezer Rehab Center, one of the only men-only rehab centers for mentally ill men in Mandeville. And they actually have a very vibrant art program as a part of their healing and recovery. Very difficult to find in Jamaica. I mean, a lot of places will do art and expression, but the Ebenezer Rehab Center prioritizes their art, because they can see where it actually goes a very long way towards the gentlemen and their healing and recovery. So when you ask them for supplies, they will tell you, like, toiletries and food and paint and paintbrushes. Like, it's on their top priority list. And it's very difficult to find a place in Jamaica that prioritizes art as a part of healing and recovery. So they're very near and dear to my heart as well. Run by 2 returning residents from England who just dived into their community as to where they saw that they needed help. And so whenever I get a chance to help them, they're at the top of my list. Montego Bay Animal Haven, soft spot. Major soft spot. Started by a woman in 2012, Tammy Brown. Shout out to Tammy. When she started, people said she was crazy and that it wouldn't work. Now they're sending dogs to Canada, right?
Wow.
And keeping dogs here thriving and happy. So these are some of the Sophie's Place, which is a mustard seed community home, but one of the few homes that actually support children with various stages of cerebral palsy.
Wow.
And they're up in Gordon Town, and they have a really soft place for me because the staff, the manager, oh gosh, I mean they're their babies. Those are their babies. I go in and not a mosquito bite, not a they just take such gentle care of these kids. And so I could go on, but those are just some of the ones that we very, very cemented in the 876 volunteer group. Yeah.
I haven't heard of many of those, and I trust that they are doing amazing work from what you were just telling me. And if we can get some exposure to them, and of course, if anybody out there wants to donate, volunteer, etc., we'll have all the contact information for all of those organizations.
And we try to hit different categories as well. Street People Liberation, the community outreach they do in Montego Bay is unreal. And one of the things that really makes them stand out is they have very faithful volunteers. And to volunteer with Street People Liberation isn't easy because you're working with the homeless community, and that comes with a lot of different intricacies of how to engage and to help them, but also keep the dignity of the people who you help. That's not easy. Some of these agencies operate within their own boundaries. They have a home, they have a property, but they're going into the homeless community on their terms and helping them the best way they can. Street People is awesome, and they partner with Feeding of the 5,000, who is doing that same work in downtown Kingston, which has one of the highest populations of homeless and houseless in the island. And we're seeing a major increase, especially obviously during pandemic, an increase of individuals on the street that need our support. So those are other ones as well.
Okay, well, thank you so much for enlightening us on all of those great organizations that you mentioned, and going to definitely be checking out some of them. And I would also say, if we can even do something where, if they'd be open to it, maybe we can do a shoot there with them, and maybe you can introduce me to maybe some of the leaders of these organizations, and I would love to speak and learn a lot more about them.
Absolutely. I mean, exposure is key. One of the things that I find really interesting with giving back is a part of our Jamaican culture is don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. There is a huge shyness around talking about the good works that you do as a volunteer because they don't want it to come off as arrogant or bragging or showing off. And it's actually, I mean, I talk to people all the time that have been giving back all of their lives and no one knows. And it's a point of pride for them that no one knows, because it's a biblical verse, right? Don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. And for me, the intention or the prayer behind that is not to how should I say, not to promote yourself.
I see.
When you're giving back, not to promote yourself. But there is a distinction between promoting giving back and promoting the person who's giving back. And I think we've lost that in the sauce somewhere. And so I can only hope and pray that no one thinks that any of the work that 876 Volunteer has done or any of my ambassador has done comes off bragging or showing off. I can only hope. But my job is to make volunteering go viral. And my job is to connect as many good hearts to good causes. And I cannot do it by putting our light under a bushel. I just can't. That's another biblical verse. Let's talk about that one. You know what I mean? Like, you can't hide your light under a bushel. Nobody ever talks about that.
Right.
I can't. And so I make no apologies for doing a beach cleanup in a thong. If that's going to get me on the Instagram algorithm and spread it, so a lot of people are like, when is the next beach cleanup? Or talk about their environmental spaces, or create a culture where people bring bags with them when they go to the beach or to a waterfall and just pick up behind them. Like, I make no apologies if my thong is a part of the revolution. Okay, I'm fine with that.
I would help with that, but I don't think I'm gonna wear a thong though.
Don't worry. We'll find a purpose.
Okay.
We'll find a way to help you, like help us go back
All
home.
right. No problem. And so, transitioning a bit, and I know when we spoke a few years ago when we first met, I believe you were trying to spend even more time here in Jamaica and maybe even eventually move here fully. Is that still a goal, priority of yours?
You know, it's my understanding of what home means has grown so much since even our first conversation about that. Because going back to the beginning of our conversation where I talked about 876 Volunteer being born out of a fear of losing my Jamaicanness, and me using 876 Volunteer as well, the best way for me to remain Jamaican personally, as in my personal experience, was to always ensure that I was giving back to Jamaica in some way. Those were my dues. Because again, like I said, I've been benefiting off of the currency of being Jamaican all of my life in other spaces. So my dues to Jamaica, my payback is to give back. And that eases my conscience when I'm not here. It brings me balance and equilibrium as a person. But I was still torn as to where home was. And when I started 876 Volunteer, it was with the intention of transitioning to Jamaica completely and all of that. My own personal journey has really helped me understand what home really is. And so instead of being torn between is Canada now my home or is Jamaica now my home, especially the year in Jamaica where I was just backpacking around the whole island, my body had to become my home. So then I started to I am my home. My body is my home. Now as I get older, I'm trying to transition even past that, where my spirit is my home. Because as you get older and your body starts to fail you, you're not going to feel secure in your home if your roof is caving in.
Right.
But if your body is no longer your home, but your spirit is your home, that's the goal for me. So with that being said, I am quite okay with, for example, living internationally and still having 876 Volunteer and feeding into that. And that's probably like a stage that I hope to get to, because a lot of different countries have different cultures around giving back, and I'm ready to actually learn from other countries and how they support their homeless community and the ideas that they have in terms of environmental sustainability. I can't learn all of that and bring it back to Jamaica if I'm here.
Right.
So I've sort of shifted away from sort of digging my fingernails in Jamaica, going, I have to get back home. I take Jamaica with me everywhere. I've gotten some peace around that. But I eventually will be spending more time in Jamaica, especially with my mom is older and she's retired, and her quality of life, I want to include more Jamaica in it and stuff like that. So yeah, I'll definitely be on the island a lot more. But it's not the typical returning resident experience for sure. Yeah.
I see. But that just speaks to just the human experience in general, right? Your mindset when you kind of began this journey and how it has matured to what it is today, and you having an appreciation for your temple being your body, and then also moving and growing to the spirituality of that. I think that's pretty amazing.
I'm trying.
I think there's a lot to be said about that. And I think even outside of everything that you're doing, I think a lot of people can learn from that and know that, you know, what you think and how you feel now may not be the same 10 years from now. And hopefully we all have the self-awareness and presence of mind to be open to grow and to learn from just the experience of life.
Yeah, like 876 Volunteer is like a moving, breathing thing. I created something that's just has a life of its own. It's frightening sometimes. But if I continue to grow, then that will be reflected in the organization and everyone around me. Like my social media ambassadors are just always in the flow. Like they're already in the flow and they have feedback and it's a part of their principle to give back. And so they're always just nourishing the organization with their energy, and just we are surrounded by, again, those agencies that I've mentioned and more that I probably haven't. We have sponsors that we collaborate with, businesses that we collaborate with, that we've collaborated with for 2 years or more now. So tomorrow today would be one. Eleni's Bakery in Kingston is going on 2 years of donating bread every single solitary month. Don't skip one.
Wow, amazing.
Buds and Brushes, which is a cannabis music community that every event it's ever had, it donates all of its proceeds to an agency chosen by 876 Volunteer. Swift Gift JA, which is a gift card platform that donated half of its vendor website to nonprofits so that people can purchase gift cards, and all of those proceeds go to the
That's freaking amazing. Amazing.
The relationships we have are just so awesome. And so, like I said, I have to grow. I have to keep growing. Swift Gift was the newest collaboration. Buds and Brushes is a collaboration going on 2-3 years. Eleni's is almost 2 years this year, and it goes on.
Amazing. And with that, where can people find out more information on 876 Volunteer?
So we actually had a volunteer helping with our website. So that's actually being redone because I've gotten some really great feedback as to what people want to see on the website. So that's being done. Our Instagram page is probably the most tenured, easiest one to use. Also, you can WhatsApp me 876-367-1114 or email 876volunteer@gmail.com. Any of those avenues will get you a response, and we can start a conversation about how we can help you either be a donor or a volunteer. We had to reimagine giving back during the pandemic. I always envisioned an agency that sort of capitalized more off of physical resources than money or cash. And the pandemic totally shifted that because we weren't able to physically go into spaces to volunteer, and that kind of stalled us a bit in terms of energy because I had to sort of be like, okay, so how are we gonna deal with that? But now with policies hopefully being lifted, we can go back into a space where physical volunteering happens more. So
okay, awesome. Yeah. So with that, Simone, I want to just thank you for taking the time out to come through and hop on the podcast.
It was my pleasure.
This was an awesome conversation. I know we're friends. I know we talk, but I learned a lot today. Sitting down and chatting with you, and I hope that we get some more traffic to 876 Volunteers. In fact, I know we will, because the subscribers here are amazing, and they really do support.
They love you. Your subscribers are no joke. And you put a lot of thought into. I was just telling someone what I really love about this platform, your platform that you've created, is it really has the conversations that especially Jamaicans that are not here need to hear.
I see.
And it highlights, the real heartbeat of what's going on here so that you can feel more knowledgeable. If I had your YouTube channel, I think I would have felt a lot less disconnected. So give thanks to you for that. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Once again, thank you for hopping on the show, and thank you all for joining us here today. And of course, please visit 876 Volunteer on Instagram and their website. As you heard, they're doing amazing work. And if you got any value out of the podcast here today, consider hitting that subscribe button, and of course that like button really goes a long way. And I will see you all in the next one. Peace.